Well, hello, Stella. Great to connect with you today. Thanks for joining me on the podcast.
Good, good to connect with you too. Yeah, I'm really excited.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, you work with On the Ground, and this is an
Mhm.
organization that both of us have a pretty rich history with.
Mm.
For our listeners who are unfamiliar, could you give a little bit of background about the organization?
Yeah. So On the Ground kind of started under the name the Chiapas Water Project in the early 2000s. Um, we are co-founded by Chris Streeter of Higher Grounds Coffee and my dad, Timothy Young, who founded Food for Thought. Um, Chris in the early 2000s was working in Chiapas, which is the southernmost state of Mexico. And he was partnering with coffee growing communities to bring access to clean water to these communities that would typically have to walk miles and miles both ways to bring water back home. So we would cut down that trip quite drastically. So this frees up time for women and children to attend school and do other things that benefit the community. So that's kind of how we started there. And then in 2010, they always like to tell the story that they were in a bar in Havana and Chris Streeter had this crazy idea to run across Ethiopia and raise money to build schools. And that's where you came into. And I was lucky enough to join that trip as well with my brother, my whole family. Since then, we've run across Ethiopia, Palestine, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. In Palestine, I believe, planted about 5,000 olive trees along the way and also started a program for female farmers to attend university. So we had a scholarship fund. I think about 10 to 20 women were a part of that program, which was really amazing. And then the Congo is our biggest and most active project right now. A majority of that work is a gender equity program where we fund anywhere between 150. This year we have 225 women attending this year-long program where they learn to read and write and calculate, and it makes them better businesswomen with their coffee farms, and they learn to make decisions with their husbands, and it brings harmony in their home and just kind of has a lot of really incredible benefits. So that's that's a very brief overview and kind of what we're working on now.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
It's such powerful work and such a great way to enrich like a human connection where there's a trade connection. So can you talk a little bit about that piece of like some of the trade work that was happening that kind of created the foundation for the organization?
Yeah, I mean, so a majority of our work happens in these coffee growing communities just because we have that connection through higher grounds and cooperative coffee is a large partner of ours as well, which is the cooperative that higher grounds is a part of. And that just kind of brings access to these communities. We already have that foundation there, so we're able to communicate with them and we're able to visit them and do the work firsthand and they tell us what they need. We're not coming in and saying, oh, you need this, you need computers, you need something. They're like, no, we need water and we need education and we need support in the fields. So that's always been at the base of our work is learning from the farmers on how we can best support them, and then we get really delicious coffee out of it. So um it's a partnership at its base. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
I was just in my daughter's school working with the Young Peace Builders Club, which is a
Mm.
club of middle schoolers. And one of the kids had this question for me that I thought was a great question, and they were sincere in not knowing the answer to it. And I want to share the question with you for you to
Yeah.
get your answer. And
That's
the question was, what does clean water have to do with peace? So how does access to clean water
wow.
create peace for people?
Wow. That was a
Yeah.
middle schooler asked that question. That's
Middle school.
amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's so much we see it here. There's so much political strife over access to clean water. Um, I mean, the people at the top a lot of times control the access to clean water. And that creates, tensions and conflict. And wow, I'm just still kind of processing that question. Um, I mean, I guess I can speak to it a little bit in Chiapas, where we've seen kind of an uptick in violence up in our communities up in the mountains. And I think that when people have access to clean water, it's kind of the base for a flourishing community and a safer one, just because when you have access to that basic need, you can start worrying and fixing other areas and issues in the community. So I think that's where I've seen it the most is by alleviating this most basic stress and need, because we all need water to survive. That's like our most basic human need, right? So when you alleviate that issue, then the community can go on and start tackling issues in education and gender equity, and it starts there, I think.
Yeah.
That's
Great
an
answer.
amazing question. Thank you. Wow.
It is so foundational. And,
Yeah.
and in some ways I felt like the question kind of came from a place where it seemed a little bit abstract to the person. And
Yeah.
part of that is because we live in a place where that's never really been a question. The water that comes
Yeah.
out of taps up here in the northwestern Lower Peninsula is good, always has
Yeah.
been. And then you look at, just like you said, I mean, when people have their basic needs met, then that can create the conditions where the community can thrive. But without that,
Yeah.
and water's right there at the center of survival.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of unrest and no justice, no peace, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
No.
It is for us here. We're so fortunate that we've got the Great Lakes, and it's never been something we've had to think about having access to clean water. You just turn on a tap and it's there. You don't question if it's clean or not. So,
Right.
and that's not the case for even all people in our state. But
Exactly.
up here, we're very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about your journey. So
Okay.
you mentioned being on the Ethiopia trip.
Mhm.
Can
Yeah.
you talk a little bit about that, like the impact that had on you at that stage in your life, and then how your journey kind of led you full circle back into the organization?
Yeah. I mean, I was 10 when we went to Ethiopia. I'm 23, turning 24 now. Um, I was fortunate enough to actually go to Chiapas when I was 6. So I got to see the water projects firsthand. I went on a 2-week trip with my dad. And I guess that's kind of where it started. But Ethiopia was quite a formative experience for me. The farthest away from home I had ever been. And it was just, the culture shock was huge, especially for somebody my age. And my younger brother was 6. So that was, we were hearing a new language that was unlike anything we had heard before, just completely new place, meeting people. And there was that language barrier, but it didn't feel that huge when we were meeting the kids in the communities. I remember walking into one of the communities where we were building a school, and I think we had already built one, or there was already a building there that we had built from the funds raised already. And I remember walking in and being met by thousands of people, and they were in that community. There were 6 or 7 buildings, but there were thousands of people that had walked who knows how far to come meet us. And that was overwhelming because I understood what we were doing and why we were there, but actually seeing it in person was incredible. And
That day.
I know, that was one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had. And my favorite part to tell is my Connor got too overwhelmed and he ended up climbing a tree
I
just to
remember.
get away from everything.
Where's Connor?
Yeah. He's like, I can't handle this. This is too much.
Climbing trees.
Yeah, it was just, and my dad always tells it too, is he kind of went looking for Connor, right? Because he's like, okay, I've lost my kid. I counted 1,000 people and found him in the tree. And there was 5 women that were standing around the base of the tree, basically like, you are not coming near this kid. Like, we've got him, and
Mm.
that was really amazing. That was really amazing to see. And, um, yeah. So, and then I also remember like kind of on our last day, the last leg of the run, we had that kind of end of run celebration. And I know a lot of our team was out sick. So including my dad, so I stood in for him and kind of got his, ceremonial, um, I don't remember what they were gifted at the end, but I remember kind of like walking up and taking in that big celebration
Yeah.
and just kind of being overwhelmed with the impact that this was having. Um,
Hmm.
yeah. So I was so young. So there's like bits and pieces that I definitely don't remember, but I do remember just like the impact kind of like that kind of hit home. Um, and obviously meeting children that were my age, and I never had any question of whether or not I was going to go to school. Like, it was always just, you know, you get up every morning, you get on the bus and you go, and there's a lot of times I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to school, and these kids, that's all they want. So that was eye opening too, that going to school was something that I definitely took for granted. And it was just all that they wanted. So I was definitely reminded of that by my parents throughout the rest of my time in school, was that experience. So it's an amazing time. And then kind of on the ground is always kind of a part of our life because my dad is on the board and we had events and fundraisers and other runs. I joined the board as the junior board member when I was 15. And through that started my own project in the Congo, uh, where I would fund tuition for students. I think I funded 20 students the first year. Then we have a really amazing employee in the Congo, and he came back to me the next year and he's like, okay, well, I have 40 students this year. So how can we make that work? And it kind of grew, and on the ground ended up taking it over when I went to college and didn't have as much time to do that. Um, and then when I graduated about a year after, they came to me and they said, we have a position. Do you want to work with us? And it kind of felt like a perfect full circle moment. It was part of my life from childhood, continued to work throughout high school and college. And then there was this opportunity to keep working. And, I have this amazing story with the organization. It's such a big part of me that it kind of felt like the perfect next step. So that was a year ago now.
Mm.
I'm in my second year as the director of development for On the Ground Global. So,
Awesome.
yeah.
And so you
Yes.
described these different areas where you're working. Chiapas is where it all started, Chiapas Water
Mhm.
Project. And the Mayavanike Coffee Cooperative is there. And
Yeah.
and that was sort of the birthplace of Higher Grounds too, where the first
Mhm.
coffee was imported. And then the run across Ethiopia happened. In Ethiopia, the birthplace of commercial coffee,
Yeah.
cradle of civilization. And you described that the joy of that celebration in where all those people came from all over. And one of the things that struck me is just how what has become normal with free trade is complete exploitation of communities like that, where they're getting
Mhm.
taken advantage of, and the product that they're doing all the work to bring to
Mhm.
our cups here in the United States is being devalued, and all of the
Mhm.
profits are made over here. So fair trade is a gesture of dignity, of solidarity, and of partnership, as you said,
Mhm.
all about partnership. And what On the Ground has done is to go beyond commercial aspects into the deeper partnership. And these
Mhm.
are all human rights hotspots. So that then Palestine and the DRC, two of the biggest human rights hotspots in the world, where
Yeah.
there's long-term oppression, violence taking place, and the means to have agency, to be able to have olive oil in Palestine and coffee in the DRC to be able to sell, um, has been overshadowed by all of this strife. And so, and exploitation, and terrible abuse of power. And so the
Mhm.
United States our government has not always been a partner. In a lot of ways, we've either, contributed to it directly, or it's sold weapons to people who are creating these conditions. And so one of the things that happened in Ethiopia, where on that last day where you described, there were these speeches where, and I remember Chris giving this speech where he talked about how, we don't have to wait for our governments or let our governments represent us. We can directly connect with each other and be involved with each other's lives in a way that is honorable, and that is a true partnership. And that's what that was about. Yeah. And
I remember that moment as well.
Really,
very
really
impactful.
So impactful. And so it's kind of a lot, right? To maintain, because it comes down to like maintaining trust and maintaining communication and connection.
Yeah.
Understanding what the needs are. So now that you've been in it for a year, can you sort of describe the landscape of on the ground's work in each of these places, and sort of like where things are at now, and what you might need help with?
Yeah. So like I said, right now our biggest project is in the Congo, and we could make the decision tomorrow and only work in the Congo, and the need would never end. There's just constant things happening, environmental disasters, corruption in their government, corruption in their communities, just a wild uptick in violence between the M23 terrorist group and the Congolese government and army. That is actually where we're working, is essentially the epicenter of all of this happening. So it's a constant conversation of, are our people safe? Can our projects go on? Are the coffee farmers okay? Is that going to happen? Is harvest going to happen? So it's kind of a constant, figuring out where we go, how we can work sustainably, and how we can better support these communities. So right now, our gender equity program is up and running. We've got 225 women in it this year. And if they have husbands, their husbands attend as well. And that's our largest group that we've ever had.
Awesome.
So that's a really incredible thing this year. We are actually partnering with a pygmy community there that has reached out to Herman, and I believe Chris and my dad were able to visit them at the end of the run across Congo. But they came to Herman and they said, we've seen this program and we want it here. Can you figure that out? And we just approved that. So we're very excited to include those 25 women. That's where we're at in the Congo. In Chiapas, we just finished our farmer field school program, which was I believe a 3-year program in partnership with Maya Vinique, where, our climate is changing, and that changes growing seasons. And it also can affect the kind of coffee variety that these farmers are able to successfully grow. So the farmer field school, we had 2 technicians that would lead these sessions all about soil health and coffee variety and how to, best cultivate their land to get the best yield and quality. That just finished. It was a 3-year program. And so we're very excited to kind of see the results of that. And we had a delegation from Cooperative Coffees go down there at the end of February to kind of meet with the farmers and see how that was going. So Chiapas is kind of at a, we're not sure where we're going to go with that project, but if we're approached by, the people that we did the water projects with, we could do another water project or continue this farmer field school program with another cooperative if we were, approached. So that's kind of at an interesting spot. Our Ethiopia project is not, necessarily active at the moment, but we were able to build 4 schools and a library. We also built bathrooms at the schools because when young girls reach a certain age, they essentially drop out of school if they don't have a safe place to deal with, their menstrual cycle, because they didn't have facilities or even just a place with walls. Yeah. So at the end of building the schools, the communities approached us and said, we want to keep our girls in schools. How can we achieve that. So that was our last project there in Ethiopia. But again, we've always kind of held strong in our belief that we will never leave a project site. We still have, lines of communication to these communities. And if we were approached, we'd figure out how to continue that support. So it's not closed, but it's just not active. So same with Palestine. That project was taken over by Nasser at Canaan. So he essentially started his own nonprofit and organization to continue that project after we had left. And
Came to the in the fall.
did and had, oh my gosh, that moment, that whole, because that was October 12th. So to have Nasser in the room and tell his story and his experience, and that was another incredible moment of my life. And just to give him that time to, because we didn't know if he was going to be able to come, and kind of last minute. And it was amazing. It was a really amazing moment. And we hear from him, on occasion, just to check in, make sure he's okay. And I know that
major figure in the West Bank in terms of someone who oversees the creation and the exporting of olive oil, of Palestinian heirloom olive. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yes. And, has been well respected on both sides of the conflict. And he is an amazing, amazing person, an amazing advocate for Palestinians. And we're very lucky to have him as a partner.
And the film that was during the run across Palestine, could you talk a little bit about, I think that's another piece of on the ground work that's really cool, the arts and culture and ambassadorship piece.
I have to have you talk about the music ambassador part, but Aaron Dennis and I know Jakob Wheeler was a big part of it as well, created this really incredible film called The People in the Olive. And it followed the lead up to the run, the actual run, and then kind of what happened after. And the daily struggles of that run were quite amazing, and I think are portrayed really well in the film. Of there are parts where our Palestinian partners couldn't join the people on the run because they weren't allowed into a certain section of Palestine. And even though there's a moment where Vivian is talking about Jerusalem, I believe she was born there and she wasn't allowed back in during the run, and they had to meet them on the other side. And that to me is just one of the craziest parts of this whole thing is they're denied access because they're Palestinian. So that's an incredible piece. It captures the whole experience, the good, the bad, the ugly, I think, so well and so beautifully. We're really fortunate to have that film.
Yes.
And Josh Davis's incredible album, your incredible album. It's a beautiful part of On the Ground.
Awesome. Yeah. Josh Davis made an album called A Miracle of Birds that was inspired by the trip, much of it written during the trip. And then Early Wine and I made one called New Flower that was aligned parallel to the run across Ethiopia. And then there was a heavy color album, River Passage, that came out from the Congo run with a lot of collaboration with Congolese artists and communities. Yeah. So it's
a very cool part.
It is a cool part. I think it deepens that cultural connection, and it also gives people sort of a lasting artifact of that partnership that can belong to people. Like Josh's songs, for example. I mean, I've seen him perform them in all these different settings, and I love the album, and it's been something that has become very relevant again. I mean, it's relevant at the time, but as time passes, like the film and the album are are worth another look and listen right now.
For sure.
And there
For sure.
was a showing of the film last fall
There
that
was.
yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. I was really excited for us to show the film again just because it tells the human story of the conflict, I think, a little bit, because we met so many people along the way. Um, and it's the one film we have out of all three that is a complete full film. Um, and we've shown it in the Traverse City community a couple of times over the last, I guess, 10 years now. Um, but obviously in the context of with the conflict now, it was a little different. And I was a little apprehensive going into it because, I wasn't sure what we were going to get with the group, but I think overall, we had a very, very positive reaction to the film. We had really great questions at the end of the film. We had most of the Run Across Palestine team there, so they were able to answer questions from their experience. I know Aubrey Parker had a lot of really great answers to questions. And then at the end, there was some conflict. We had, I believe he was an Israeli man and stood up and kind of uh, was unhappy with what we were showing. Um, that he felt that it was not showing the full story. Uh, it wasn't violent, but the words felt violent. It was very emotional, and he had, yeah, it was a tense moment. But I think Jakob and Aaron handled it so well, and were able to kind of ease the tension a little bit. Um, but I do believe that they actually did not stay for the whole film. I don't think that they actually saw it, unfortunately.
Mm.
Just came in for the end bit. But overall, it was a very positive evening
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, beautiful moment in a very tense time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciated that safe space for community dialogue and
Yeah.
a space that was being held by a lot of very compassionate, capable people. And
Mhm.
and that willingness for voices to be welcomed in, I think it was really helpful for our community at the time. And it came with
Yeah.
some tension and discomfort, which
Yep.
we're all feeling, whether or not we go into spaces like that.
Yeah.
So so
Yeah.
so you went to K College
Mhm.
and you've come back to On the Ground. Can you sort of talk a little bit about like what this opportunity means to you, like at this
Yeah.
your journey, and maybe like what you imagine yourself doing as you went to school and what you went to school for?
Yeah. So I got my undergrad degree in political science, very, liberal arts, general kind of. I didn't have a focus in the political science area. So, um, but I always kind of knew I wanted to work with nonprofits just because I had that experience already with On the Ground. Um, so I knew that the whole time. I was lucky enough to intern with Rock the Vote my junior year. I had an online internship during an election year, and that was really, really cool to have that experience and meet all of those incredible people. Um, so when I graduated, I worked at Grocery Star Chocolate since I was about 15 on and off. So kind of went back to that and just enjoyed being back in my community. And then um, it just it made so much sense to kind of start in the nonprofit world back at On the Ground where I started, um, because it feels like such a safe space for me. I've known everybody since I was so young, and it's a great place for me to kind of learn what I'm doing because it is such a safe space. Um, Not a lot of 22, 23 year olds get an opportunity to be a director of development for a international nonprofit. Um, And it's given me a lot of really amazing opportunities so far. I got to travel back down to Chiapas, um, and meet with the farmers there and our partners there and see our work in action again. Um, so it's been really incredible to have this experience in such a safe way. Uh, and, I'm in charge of fundraising and making sure we can fund our projects. But then I also get to do a lot of other things in the organization just because it is just me here in the US. So I get to do our newsletter and I run our social media and kind of get to gain a lot of experience in a lot of different areas. So from this, after this, I get to figure out what I really want to do. Um, so it's been a really incredible experience. Getting to work with our board too, which is made up of a lot of really amazing people. Um, I've got amazing mentors and a really great group of people behind me. So it's been incredible to do so. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
your leadership is so amazing and so welcomed and celebrated. So thank you for being willing to apply your brilliance and your wisdom to this job that has such an impact.
Yeah, a lot. Yeah, it feels, it's a very rewarding job too, because, we have constant communication with Herman in the Congo, and he's able to send us these photos and we get to see it in action, even though I've never been to the Congo, we're just able to see it, and it's amazing. Yeah, I can't really imagine a better job right now than this one. So
Wonderful.
amazing.
So how can we support on the ground?
Yeah, well, donations always help, and any amount helps essentially. We highly encourage people to become monthly donors because having that, you know, income that we can rely on and plan for is the most effective for us, because then we know, oh, we can actually add those 25 women to our gender equity work this year because we have that ability to do so. You can donate online, pretty easy on our website, which is onthegroundglobal.org. Right now, Higher Grounds are selling a blend of coffee that if you buy it from them, they donate $5 per bag. It's called the Awaken Blend. And, we're going to have some events kind of coming up in the future. We're hoping to do a run in the fall, the fall equinox run. So that's in the planning stages right now. Just to get back to, our running roots and where we started, and not going to be a 40-mile run overnight. So we're going to make it accessible to some more people. And yeah, so that's kind of where we're working on right now. And yeah.
Awesome. Great. And people can go to the website to make their donation and sign up for the mailing list to keep plugged in. And you're on social media, so we can follow you there.
Yeah. Yep. We do a monthly newsletter, so I will not, invade your inbox a whole lot. But we do a monthly newsletter just giving updates on projects and, where we are in fundraising and all of that stuff. We are on social media. We're on Instagram and Facebook, both On the Ground Global. There might be a confusion because there are some other on the ground accounts, but we are ontheground.global. That's our active one. We post updates on projects and stories of some of the women that are in our program right now. And as the program ends, we'll, check in with them again and see how their lives have changed over the past 12 months. And yeah.
Well, keep up the good work. Thanks so much for taking.
Thank you.
Stella.
Thank you for having me.